I immediately felt at ease with him. He had a very rare, how shall I say, sort of humanity, and he had also humility. He treated me as an equal. It wasn't like going to see some great old man and that you had to kowtow to, and he wanted one to stay and talk, and I visited him about 8 times in the last 6 years of his life. He was very much a maker, and I was particularly struck by his hands and his wrists, and the way he used his hands, that you could see that he was somebody who drew and carved and painted, and there was this sort of tactile feeling about the way he used his hands. On one occasion I arrived, and he was really in quite a temper, and I quickly discovered he was reading a book about the poets of the First World War, published in the 1960s, but I forget who it was by, but it was somebody who had really taken him to task for writing in parenthesis, treating the experiences in some terms heroic. And he was very angry for being criticised about this, and virtually, I think, throwing the book across the room, he said to me, compared with knocking around the art class, the life class at Camberwell Art School, it was bloody heroic. And it sort of brought home to me how my generation, who hadn't fought and who we generally had sort of anti-war sentiments, really couldn't understand what it was really like to have enlisted in 1914, 1915, that feeling of patriotism, and of course the terrible suffering that they endured in the trenches. He would bring out his gramophone from under the bed and place it on the bed, and then get the record of him reading from passages of In Parenthesis and the Anathemata. And what I remember about this, it was a bit like the sort of situation in Samuel Beckett, Krapp's last tape. I had David Jones sitting on the side of his bed, and he would lean forward like this, listening to himself on the record, reading these passages for In Parenthesis. Now, what it brought home to me was just how full of humour In Parenthesis is. Of course, it's also at times extremely bleak and describing terrible things, but his mood would change from solemnity to chuckles of laughter, and he would glance up at me to see if I was getting the joke. And because I was only sort of 20 and not familiar with some of the First World War slang and the popular songs, quite often I wasn't getting the joke. But it was fascinating to see the way in which he regarded it, as so much of it, as actually amusing as well as solemn. These two things, the sort of joyousness and the solemnity, very much part of his whole makeup.